Hello, today I'm going to be painting this landscape in Procreate on an iPad and explaining the tools I use and everything to get to the finished product. Let's get started. Okay, I'm going to start with creating a new canvas. I'm going to go screen size. For me, that's 2752 by 2064. But I think any iPad landscape will do, so let's start there. And I'm going to start off by making some big shapes. So I've got one layer here by default, so that's fine. So back in the distance, we're going to have a blue, and so any kind of blue around here will do. Don't worry too much about it, because we're going to desaturate it. So use this color wheel, this Disc Classic Harmony. We want Classic, because it's easier to desaturate because you get these sliders there. So let's pick something like that, test it, see if it's light enough or dark enough, etc. It's a bit too dark for me, so there we go, that one's okay. So I'm going to start by making some rough shape of where this mountain's going to be. Don't worry too much, we can mess around with it later if it's not right. Okay, that'll do, something like that. Grab this, pull it down, fill it in, make sure you don't have too many areas that are not fully covered, because later when we paint on top, that could be an issue. All right, so now we got that. I'm going to do another one on top of it. Now this is where color picking comes in handy. So you hold down, we pick this color, and the next one in front of this layer has to be darker. So I don't worry too much about what color it is exactly. I just, this is going to be kind of greenish, so you might as well push it to the green. And this is why I like this one, because we can just pick this one again, move it to the green, and then we want to make it darker. So you can either use this slider to bring it down, or you can just pick. It's better if you pick, actually, because then you're going to change it a little bit. If you go, it's going to be a bit too rigid. So test it. It's a little bit too dark. That'll do. So make sure it's on the new layer before you start painting. And then again, pressing hard, because this brush, actually I didn't say which brush I was using, I'll show you in a second, but it doesn't really matter. You'll notice it just, at the moment, it certainly doesn't matter. I'm using a painting flat brush, but up to this point you could have used anything. We're just trying to block in colors, so any default brush will do. And that's about it. We want to go a bit lower, I think. Okay, it can be messy there because we're going to go over the top of it. We're going to go back to this mountain, actually, because I noticed we've got over to the left here a little bit. So you can either, color drop it. Doesn't really matter if it goes down there, or just fill it in if you'd rather paint. Okay, create a new layer. So we've got the mountains back there. One thing I do quite often to make sure I'm on the right layer is just tap these on and off so I can tell. So I'll create a new layer for, this is going to be the lake section. Now, one thing is slightly different about the lake is it needs to be completely horizontal. So if you go here, pick the select tool, get to the rectangle, click color fill, and then we just draw a box down the bottom. Now you'll notice I didn't actually choose a color there by mistake, but we can change the color after the fact when we use color fill, which is quite handy. So I'll pick that one again and make it a little bit darker. With the water, we're going to change it quite a bit, so don't worry too much about that. And then we've got another layer. Again, it needs to be relative. So this is going to be the darkest part of the entire painting. So we take the darkest one and we knock it down there, test the color. Yep, looks good. So another tool I like to use is, just to show you, is pick the select tool, pick freehand, pick color fill, make sure the little bucket is blue, and then you can do that. So what I did there is you grab that, you can make a shape, any shape, and then you hit this little dot and it fills it in. And it's quite nice to make quick shapes. So and it's nice to make them a bit more random than you would otherwise, or I tend to anyway. So there's my little trees. We got a bunch down here, something like that. And then we got a big bushy thing going on here. And so let's fill that in. Okay, there's the basic shapes. So let's put a color in for the sky. You could have started with that, but it doesn't really matter. So I create a new layer, and you need to drag it down. So just hold it down. It can be a bit picky sometimes, but once you grab it, stick it down the bottom. And then let's choose the blue. Don't get too worried about what blue. Anywhere around here. So if you want it more greeny, go that way. If you want it more purpley, go that way. It doesn't really matter. But you want to be around this section, which is the light part. And then drop it in and have a look. And is it light enough? Is it dark enough? We're going to change it, so don't worry too much about it right now. We just basically want to fill the canvas so it's not white, which is very overwhelming and not a nice color to deal with. So now I got this in, I generally have a look, are my colors good? And what I'm looking for is like, I've got the white, so one nice trick to do is put a new layer right on top. If you're struggling to decide if your background's working, didn't need two there. Grab black, grab this, color fill it in, and then we swap it to one of these, which I can't remember which one it is, but one of them turns it to black and white. Oh, there we go. Hue. So once we have hue, we can see if our values are working. Now values are just gray, and gray to black, so white to black. But in a nice landscape painting, you'll generally have light gray to dark gray, and you won't really want white or black. You can have little bits of white, but not too much. So the sky is kind of dark, or it's all relative, or we decide that this is too light. So what you can do now is you can leave this value system going on. So the value's working okay. This should be the lightest. Sky's always the lightest, unless you have like thunderstorms and stuff. So, but we don't. So that's the lightest. Then we go darker, 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 darker. So it's working quite well, but it's probably a bit too close. So what you can do then is go back to this one. So you can either lighten the sky or darken. So I think the sky's okay. But we can darken this one. So we go here, hue, saturation, darkness, and we'll drop it down. You can't drop it further than this one. Oops. Because that doesn't really make any sense. But we want to darken it like there. Something like that. It's a bit fiddly, this thing. You can type the number in, by the way. I think you could type. I thought you could type the number in. No, you can't. That's crap. Should be able to. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we have everything blocked in. It's time to add some highlights to the underlying dark shapes. Now they're dark on purpose because we're about to highlight them. Maybe they're not dark enough in certain places, so when we work on each area, I'll change them as we go. So we go back to front. Usually I leave the sky to last, so we'll work on the last layer, which is the big mountain. And what you want to do is create a new layer. Click on it, and we want clip and mask. Now what that does is whenever I draw on the top layer, it conforms to whatever's underneath. So you'll see this little arrow sign, so you know clipping is on. That's as simple as that. And now we need to work out where the sun's coming from. The sun's coming from this direction. So all highlights have to kind of be like this. So that's kind of the straightforward. So we already got highlights, but we want to be a bit more careful than that. So I start by picking the original color, just to give me a guide of how dark it is, basically, and then I'll move it to something else. So we want a pinkish highlight for this one. So now why I started there is I need to kind of go this way. I don't want to go that way because it's too dark. That'll be too saturated, so we want to be like up here somewhere. And that'll be a good start. Maybe it's a bit too bright. So we start there somewhere, and then we can highlight again. So I usually do like 2 goes. So I'll zoom in a little bit. And I'm still using, oh, my clipping mask is gone. I pressed undo, so make sure you get it back on and sticks. So again, I'm using this painting flat brush. I'm going to use this brush for the entire painting, and it has transparent edges, so that means when I press soft, it will be the opacity will be lower, so you can do some shading, basic shading. Now I don't go nuts with that, and most of the time I'm doing about medium pressure. And so let's so again, the sun's coming from there, and it's important to angle it correctly. You don't want that, because that's not the way the mountain goes. The mountain will come down. So you don't have to be too careful, but what you're trying to do is making sure it hits the hue, and the shadow section where it wouldn't get in is not completely dark. You don't want it, because this isn't going to be the final highlight. We'll have another highlight on top, but you'll notice the angle of the highlights are roughly the same each time. Not completely the same. It'll get a bit boring, but roughly the same. And start slow. We can build this up. Well, we don't want to try and finish this section, because we need to know how it relates to the other one. So we'll start fairly basic, and maybe we'll have one coming around the back of this. So pressing lightly, I accidentally picked the wrong color there, and my size is 5%. Now don't worry about the size. You can see the little brush size is pretty small, but keep it fairly big though for this portion. You don't want too many details. Now the important part of some of this bit is you see the highlight hits here and it doesn't get past here, so you create interesting parts to the mountain. Okay, we do again the same again for this one. Create a new layer, clipping mask, and this one is a greenish mountain, so this is grass. Go and enter some rock. You could make it all grass really, but for now we'll just see how it goes. Now I notice on this one over here is quite dark, very dark actually. It's almost as dark as this one, but this section is quite light, so I'll probably just darken this a little bit rather than the whole thing, because we got a big difference. So again, I always start with the base color, so I have a color picked out and then drop it, and it needs to be almost as dark as this, but not quite. Try and keep it a little bit interesting, so don't hold the pen all the way down. You want some variation. And we kind of blend it into the bottom here, so you don't want really hard edges for this bit. Kind of blend it in so it disappears. Now kind of keep it messy, because we can tidy it up later. But if you keep it too neat, it'll look all fake. Okay, so this green is probably not the right green, so go here. I think I want it a bit more saturated. A lot more saturated, actually. Something like that. Again, I don't paint on this layer, so we can change it later again. Okay, so I'll start here. Let's get a highlight in. Make sure I'm on the right layer, which is the clipping mask. Oops, didn't mean that. And then I want a yellowish highlight, so I'll push it to the left, and then we'll go up here somewhere, try it out. That's maybe not saturated enough, but we'll go with it for now. And this, again, you have to shade in the way that the land forms, if that makes sense. So the highlights need to go kind of in the direction of the land mass, or it'll look funny. So I mean, that's okay. It's probably a bit too much, too bendy. So I mean, what I mean by that is if you do this, I mean, as long as it's consistent. Again, I'm on the wrong layer again. As long as it's consistent, you'll be okay. But try not to do that and then that, because then it looks weird. So we'll go down like this, make sure you leave gaps. Gaps are important. Now we'll do something a little bit different this time. So it gets quite light down here, so I can press a bit harder. And we'll add interest later. And this actually goes into a bit of rock, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to ignore that and not do it. So you don't always have to follow exactly what the reference is doing. Okay, for this bit though, we've got some green highlights, sorry, the almost yellow highlights up here. And down here where the sun is hitting it, it's warming it up. So you need a warm orange. So what you can do is keep that same color and shift it down there. Let's see what that looks like. And gently put it on. It's not saturated enough. So saturation is up this direction. So I'll push it up there. That's maybe a bit too much. Too much is okay, because we can drop it back down. And how we drop it down is you just pick the highlight you got above and then paint over the top, and I'll automatically drop it back down again. But we'll leave that for now. So what I'm trying to do here now is just elevate all the painting at the same time. So we get an idea of how it works together. Now we'll go back over it. So one thing you need to make sure is that these layers blend in with each other. Or they look like they're just stuck on. So we can do that now. So why I do layers above layers and not try and finish one is you have to see how everything relates to everything else. So I can see now that this is very much stuck on to each other. So we need to fix that. So basically it just means blending in. So this one blends in with this one. So we'll take that color and we'll lightly, again, kind of blend it in. This is in the side of the painting, so you don't want too much detail on this anyway, or it'll draw your eye away. Okay, so that now it's not stuck on, it's kind of blended in. It does the same hue, but we'll leave that for now, because that's kind of more of an effect. Now your painting should look fairly messy at the moment, and it will do for quite a long time. It'll only start to look correct quite late into the painting. So let's have a go at fixing these. So we go a little bit different here. I will use the same, because we actively want to change the shape of this, we do it on the same layer. So again, I turn it on and off to make sure I'm on the right one. So I'll pick this, and now we need a fairly small brush. It doesn't have to be crazy small. So, and how much detail you have is kind of up to you. I'm not telling you don't have detail. You could spend a lot longer on this and get, you know, super detailed, but it's not going to make the painting much better. So we just want them to look like trees. Again, make sure the brush is going horizontal this time. Ish. Okay, that's a bit messy. So we could tidy that up. Needs to be fairly horizontal. Try not to be too clean. Right, these are, oops, these are very small, so I will make my brush smaller this time. Try and bunch trees together. They're very rarely by themselves. You can have like one or two little ones, but they generally come in bunches, and vary the sizes of them. But don't be too fiddly with them. As you can see, I'm not that careful. And I'm not copying references here, I'm just making this up. Okay, we can make them tidier again later, but see, what I'm doing is trying to get a consistency for the entire painting so it doesn't look weird. Okay, so this needs to blend in with this eventually, so let's do that now, and then we can see if it's working. Like, the colors are a bit off right now, but don't worry about that at the moment. So we'll do the same again for the water. Create a new layer, create clipper mask, and we'll start to put this information into here. So basically we paint this upside down, but don't copy and paste it in because it looks kind of crap when you do that. But I only have the information of kind of this section, so I'd have to stop here until I do this bush. So we could do this big bushy thing now. Let's do the bushy thing now. Otherwise I'll have to come back and do the water again. So one above the trees, clip a mask, and let's highlight this. So once you start to have colors, you want to use the colors everywhere when they're similar. So this bushy thing has roughly the same highlights as this color, so I'll pick that. Make sure I got a fairly big brush. So this is like a leafy one. All right, one thing you want to be careful of once you start to do big trees is you might not want to clip mask this one, because you might want to shape the tree a little bit. So let's get some bits in here. You notice I don't... so one thing you need to do with bushes and trees is vary your angle of the brush. Again, it's still like pointing towards the sun, but you can make it a bit more varied, because obviously the bush kind of goes all over the place. There is no one direction. Okay, that's not too bad. We want a bit of varying color, and we'll probably have more eventually, but let's just get a little bit of color in so it doesn't look so monochrome. Okay, it might be a bit too bright, but let's work with it. So again, don't worry that it looks a bit weird at the moment. It will come together at the end. So I'll go back to the water. So I'll take that color, and it's a little bit lighter. Yeah, something like that. And then I'll paint down and kind of mimic what's going on, but not too closely, because we're going to push this later anyway. All I want now is a rough idea. Unless the water is perfectly still, it will not be an exact replica. So using that same color for the entire thing at the moment. And you want to, so what I do is take that color and gently blend the edges in. So I'm just using that base color. So the edges are not so, so you can't see the line. Okay, so it's starting to get somewhere now, and we can pick some of these colors. So pick like the dark in-betweeny green and lightly put it on. Don't press too hard. And then, so we're going to work on this highlight more. So this highlight is going to go here. And so whatever we change this will have to be changed here. But for a start, we'll just get some colors in so we can see what's going on, so it doesn't look so weird. And so this will highlight quite a lot because it's very bright up there. So you can push a little bit harder for these. And the sky doesn't get into it because we don't see enough, so the sky will be down here somewhere, so we don't get that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. There's a lot more to do, but that's kind of like the basic highlight. And I'll leave the now let's do a bit of the sky now. So we don't need to clip and mask the sky because it's the entire thing, so you can't really go out of it, so don't worry about that. Now there's a little trick I do with the sky, which is a bit different. I don't paint the sky. So what I do is use the selection tool, freehand, and the little bucket, and then we'll start with that color and we'll lighten it down the bottom for now. We can do more, so make a big selection there, turn the selection off, go to Gaussian blue and push it up, so you can vary how much it is. So obviously just blend it in as much as you want, and then we can do the same at the top. So pick that color, go shift it up there, so you lose saturation when you blur it, so you can go a little bit further. So try this a few times. If it doesn't look right, just undo it and try again. And there we go, we've got a nice gradient from back to front. So what it looks like before, which is a bit dull, and then we have a nice little sky. Now once you put this kind of stuff in, it might affect what we're doing here. Like this might not be dark enough, but we'll tweak those as we go. So I don't think it's dark enough, perhaps, so we can, so I'm on the layer underneath. I was actually on the wrong layer. So go there, pick brightness, oop, not saturation, and then we can tweak it, make it a little bit darker. And if you haven't got the darker light, go through your painting and mess with them. But we'll mess with them right at the end too. So don't worry about it now. Contrast and all that kind of stuff takes a while to get correct. So that's kind of the next phase. We got it all in now. Now we'll do it again. We'll do another layer over the top, and we'll work on some of the shadow areas. Okay, so let's go back from the start, and let's go back to the first layer. Now we can get a little bit more detailed here, so just checking my brush size. So there's some snow in the shadow area, so we can do that first. So create another layer. You can put clipper mask on or not. I'm not going near the edges really, so it doesn't really matter in this case. So with snow, it's obviously white-ish, but it reflects whatever the sun is. I'm going to go generic white for this one. But when the snow is in the shadow, it goes kind of bluish. So around there, maybe not enough blue. You can go quite saturated for snow. And then we can put the highlight above. So let's get some shapes in. Now we're trying to just get some nice shapes basically where the snow would fall. There's no exact science to this, but keep in mind it doesn't really go on edges that are vertical, because obviously it needs to land somewhere. So the snow would land like maybe on the top and maybe down the bottom, but it wouldn't really land here. It might do really tiny bits, but so you could do like a tiny bit like that, where it's like a ledge, but you can't do big blobs. So keep the blobs kind of where it would fall. So obviously it fall down here, and then this looks like a ridge. So you can have a bit there and bits here. So it takes a while to get used to putting snow in the right places, and sometimes it can be a little unrealistic, so don't stress about it too much, but I'm putting it in the right place. And if it's in the wrong place, we can deal with that in a minute, so just kind of put it wherever you want at the beginning. And make sure it's in the shadow side too, not just the highlights. So now we have that. Take the eraser brush, make it a little bit smaller, and to add detail you can just remove some of it. It's easier to add detail removing sometimes than it is adding, and you can go fairly rough, but you can get some nice patterns now where it would. So on the edges now it kind of it breaks up and then groups together. It's a little bit like water, the way the snow falls and then gets stuck. So let's get some nice shapes where the snow falls and hits places. So we don't just want big blobs everywhere, the snow, because that's not how it falls. Okay, that'll do. So now I'm looking at it, the highlights are probably not bright enough. So this is why I paint everywhere and then go back. Now it's relatively not colorful enough. Now we can either paint over the top or we can adjust them. I'll try both and then we can see how that goes. So this technique of erasing Well, it also works on the highlights. If we go back to the highlight areas where it's a bit too blobby, we can add detail just basically by removing highlights, and we can get some more interesting shapes on the mountain where all the cracks and the rocks go. As you see, you don't have to be overly careful when you do this. It might look random, but it's kind of has some method to it. So the sun's still coming from here, so I'm trying to put the shadow sections towards the left. Okay, so we have some detail there without doing much. So let's boost those highlights. So again, hue saturation. So let's whack the saturation up and brighten it a little bit. So maybe quite a lot actually. So that might not even be enough. So when you do that though, it has a knock-on effect to the rest. So I'll have to do the same to the one in front of it. And then the one in front of it again, which is probably okay for now. Okay, so I get a bit distracted there, but that's okay to jump around. Let's go back to the snow. So now we want to add the highlight. So let's try that out. Yeah, that looks good. So you want to be selective with these highlights. So let's use another technique here. I want the highlights to be in the snow. Now, doing that is gonna mean I need to be careful, but there's another trick. So click on the, so this is the snow shadow, click on it and click alpha lock. So that means it doesn't go outside my highlights. So there, I've already got highlights of snow, but you want it a bit cleaner than that. So anywhere the sun kind of hits the snow, we'll have some highlights, but you want to leave lots of shadow. So you got to kind of work out where it would come. So the sun would come through here, but this is kind of like in a dip, so it might not get there. So just fiddle around and make sure you, so this might be all in shadow. This, so you can follow the ones underneath, right? So you get the pinky bit. So the sun's hitting there. So that means the snow would also be highlighted. And so this is kind of like trial and error here of what works and doesn't. And just put little dots so it looks like the sun's getting through. And right up here, the sun's going to hit it, so you can go a little bit brighter up here. Maybe there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Don't overdo it. This only takes a minute. If you spend ages on it, you'll overdo it. So again, I still don't think those highlights are bright enough. So let's try that again. Okay, that's better. And maybe, well, we're going to work on this again in a minute. So leave this area. Well, no, actually, I will do the same again. I'll try and shift it a little bit as well. So experiment and come up with what you like. And you have to do the same for the water too, but don't match it, just. And so there's another trick. If it's looking a bit dull, go to curves. Now don't worry too much that it looks kind of complicated. Just drag the left one or the right one around and kind of experiment, see what it does. Usually I use it to make it more contrasty. Okay, so there we go. Turn them off. And there we go. This one is looking a bit too detailed. Everything is fairly not detailed, and this is, so maybe we simplify that. But we're getting somewhere now. So now it doesn't look right because this is really detailed. This has no detail, and this is not going to have too much detail anyway. But the middle section looks a bit weird now. So let's work on the middle section. We can either paint straight over the top, or you can create a new layer. Doesn't really matter in this case. So I'm just going to go over this. So what we can also do the same again. Make sure you're on the right layer. Is pick that eraser again And my eraser is the same brush as the painting flat brush. So we can do the same by erasing some of these highlights and making some more interesting areas where the sun doesn't get through. And it'll start to make the land look like it's got like bumps and rocks and holes and all this kind of stuff. So it's just makes it look interesting. Now it's not that difficult. You don't go crazy with it. Okay, there we go. That looks okay. Now we need to join this area up here. Now we can do that. So what we want to do is make some atmosphere. So let's just do that now. So it doesn't look too stuck on. So this looks stuck on again. Remember I said earlier that we need to be careful that these don't look like too like flat masses. So you need to blend them in. So, and I did, but now I darkened this, it doesn't match that one anymore. So we go back to this section. We pick that color. Make sure your brush is fairly big. And then we blend it back in again. Again, don't be overly careful. Picking the right color. Okay, now it kind of blends in. Now we're going to blend in this side. So we're going to use a bit of a trick. So let's go up to the top. We can do a value check as well now and again. So it looks pretty good. So what you'll find, so maybe this still needs blending in. What I'll do at the end, like right at the end, is I'll put another layer over the top of everything and just tweak a little bit. But if you take any painting of professionals or something, and you look at the grays, what they have is everything is, as long as it's not a high contrast painting, all the grays are fairly similar. If on the other hand, if you take a beginner's painting and turn it black and white, it'll be sometimes very off, like this will be too light or this will be too dark and things like that. So keep on doing the value check now and again. So I'll create another layer. We're going to try and blend this section in. So we need this layer behind the trees though. So be careful where you put it. What is this? That's the bush. So we need to be behind the trees. So if you just want to check, nothing happening. So clearly I'm on the wrong layer there because nothing happening. It's because I got clipping mask on. We don't want, sometimes when you create a new layer and it has a clipping mask, it'll have another clipping mask. So turn that off. So this is where I want it. So that's fine. You can just clear that. Now we're going to do a trick again with the select freehand color fill. And I'll just make a shape using the sky color so it blends in. Now it looks kind of funny and we don't want this section, so we'll get rid of that. And then go to Gaussian blur again and then blur it out. Now we don't want this section, so I need to clear that. Now, if you have a big section you need to clear, you can use the select freehand, turn color fill off, draw the shape. You swipe down with 3 fingers and you press cut. So if you need to get rid of a big shape. So that's pretty good. So that blends it in now. So I can show you what it looks without blending it in. So it doesn't look all stuck on. So it's not technically bad that way. And sometimes it's okay. But you do that and it kind of blends in. But we might want to drop it a little bit. So press that in and use the opacity. So we want to see some of it, but not all of it. So all of it disappears there, which would mean it's very misty, which is kind of unlikely. So pick where you think is good. There it will do. And it makes the trees pop out as well. So let me show you again without it. So it's just a very subtle thing, but it makes quite a big difference to make it look like these actually belong together. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Now you see the trees are a little bit messy. Like sharp edges, like straight, are probably not a good idea. So you might want to tidy these up. So we take that, see how big the brush is, too big. so you want more tree shapes. So really, you got to get rid of these kind of square shapes that came from earlier, just to make it look a little bit better. But I won't bore you with that. You can do that. It's fairly simple. You don't want to watch me doing that. What's next? So we're looking pretty good now. You don't want to go too crazy here. We can put some little details in here, like little trees. One thing to do for that is, I'm already on this layer, so let's add some little trees, like a little tree section, like here and here. Now, this might seem like they don't do anything, but what it does do is, because we know how big trees are, they're like 20 feet or whatever, it gives you scale of how big this landmass is now. So if I had a tree like that, it's going to make this landmass a lot smaller, because we know this tree is 20 feet or something. So, but because I made these trees tiny, it pushes this back and makes this landmass look even bigger than it is. So it's just a nice little trick. Okay, one thing that's bothering me is this orangey section here. It's too orange. So all I did there was grab the color next to it and lightly, not heavily, lightly go over the top and drop the color down a little bit. Okay, so one thing we want to do is add a bit of detail to these trees. Now, it'll be very, very subtle. So we go back to our tree layer. You can paint it straight in. We're not trying to get to the edges here, so don't worry about that. So pick the color, shift it to green. Now pick a really, really dark green and test it. It's too dark. All right, too light. That's about right, but it's a bit saturated. When it's in the shadow, you don't get much saturation. So you can probably barely see it on your screen, which is fine. That's too dark again. Too light, sorry. Right, so you want to just about see it. So this is going to take a little bit of fiddling to get the right one. Now, if it's a bit bright when you press like really hard, don't worry about that. You can just press lighter. So let's put a tiny bit of detail. Now, it might not seem like it matters, but it does. You don't want too many shapes that are just pure one color, because in real life that just doesn't really happen. When you look at something, you can always see detail in pretty much everything. Now, it might be subtle, but it does matter. Not so much in the little ones, because you wouldn't see that. You can reuse that green over here as well for consistency over the highlights and darken it a little bit. One thing about this is bringing too much attention, because you want to kind of look this way. Just pulling your eye away, so I want to drop it down, and so you're not looking at it. And bushes are fairly dark anyway. Okay, so let's push down now, so you're not looking at it so much. See, it was like that, but I want it darker. And also it's a bit kind of messy. So let's simplify it. So I'm just picking the colors that are already in there. I'm simplifying it, so you're not looking at it too much. It's still probably a bit too light, but we'll leave that for what it is. Okay, there's a bit of detail down here, so some rocks. I'll do that at the end, where I'm kind of just finishing off. So let's work on this water again. So let's pick some. When you're doing water, make sure you're either going down like this, or you're going across like this. But we're gonna smudge her in a second anyway. So let's make this a bit darker here. And we want. Oh, you pick the color. Sometimes you get the wrong ones. We want this kind of contrasty here. so it draws your eye here. So contrast always makes you look at it, basically. So if you have bright and dark, it'll make the viewer look at it first. So we want them, and they follow lines. So you'll go here, you'll follow these lines, then you'll follow this line and end up around here. So you always have a focus, which is so it's roughly around here. Okay, we want to add a little bit of color into the water. So basically what you're going to do is pick the surrounding colors like these and put them into the water very gently, and it'll make the colors the water seem like it's all reflecting stuff. We don't quite get the sky in here, which is a pity because when you do, it looks really reflective, but we can't get it in there really. But what we want to do now is add some ripples and things. So all you do is like pick colors that we've already got and shift them around, and you can make this one a little bit more detailed. So reusing some of these colors, I have kind of like where the landmass, and you can have white, but don't go too crazy. A couple will do, just to show that it's kind of moving. Now, one thing we want to do is take the smudge tool and go hard brush, medium hard brush. So airbrushing, it doesn't really matter. Just make sure the brush is small, because it's gonna push how big the brush is. So let's make it sure it's kind of small, too small. And going horizontally, make some ripples, so it looks like the water's moving a little bit. Don't go nuts with this, because it'll look a bit fake. Alright, there we go. That'll do. And if this isn't looking contrasty enough, go there, go to your curves, and grab this bottom one and pull it to the right. Now, I could do this for pretty much the entire painting, and usually when you paint, it kind of gets a bit muddy, so it's nice and digital that you can just go back and mess with them. Now, these two are two layers, but you'll want to do that to both of them. So grab them and merge them together, and then we can do the curve again, and you can contrast it again. So the entire bush is a bit too bright, I think, still. Yeah, it's better. And I think it would blend in more with this water. So going back, I'm going to take the usual brush and using and kind of blend it in so it almost disappears down the bottom. Okay, it's getting better. So I kind of just want this one out of the way so it doesn't drag your eye. And if you remember, we're really way back, it was super bright. You could probably go back to the start and see, but let's get a bit of the other colors in there. I don't like this bush much, but you can't have it, perfect each time. So one thing we can do though is mess up the edges a little bit. So taking the eraser, we can, so we don't have so much perfect edges. And you might want to do that with these two. So let's find that. So one thing we can do is put some holes so the trees are see-through. Don't do too many of these, or it can look a bit strange. That'll do. So you can see through them. Okay, there's not too much left to do now. You can work on lots of things, and At this point now, I'd probably tidy things up. Let's get some clouds in there though first. It's very rare that you'll have a day like this, and it looks a bit strange because you got lots of detail and then nothing in the sky. Now, this simple clouds are very easy to do. You generally start grey, so pick the blue color up there, grab that and slide it all the way to the bottom, and then have a look and see what it looks like. And that's an okay grey, and then we'll add a little bit of white. So basically all you got to do is make some shapes, simple shapes, and we can blend them in a second. So almost don't worry about these shapes because they're not going to end up like this. And put some little wispy ones as well, like that. So that is basically it. Then you grab this smudge tool. Make sure you're on soft brush this time, airbrush soft brush. I generally don't use soft brushes, but for clouds we do. So, and then push these clouds around. Now, the important thing about these clouds when you do the smudge is don't smudge everything. So if I do that, it's kind of okay, but you don't want to smudge everything because some clouds, sorry, all clouds kind of have edges to bits of it. So that looks much better. So you want the edge. So leave some edges, not many, just a couple. So they have some form to them, or they kind of stop looking like clouds. So again, I've left that and that. These little wispy ones, you can just get rid of it, but leave a couple of bright bits. Now also, if the clouds they've gone a bit too fluffy, grab the white, go back to the brush, put some highlights in there. Again, be careful not to go too crazy, and then push those highlights in. So it look like the clouds are a bit more 3D, but less is more with the clouds, to be honest. If you try and paint them too clever, they will stand out too much, and you don't want that. We should just add to it. Okay, there we go. That'll do. I don't do too much more for clouds. Now, to show you what it looks like without the clouds, it looks kind of looks bare, right? So put the clouds back in. Looks pretty good. Okay, so what I would do now is I'm not going to show you all of this because, or explain what I'm doing, because it's pretty much the same concept, all of it. So what I would usually do is I create a new layer up the top. I pick my regular brush, so I'm still using the paint flat brush. I generally stick to the same brush for every single part, and I'll see how big my brush is, and then I'll go around color picking and tidying things up basically. So, but I don't want to worry about which layer I'm on and if I got clipper mask on and all that kind of stuff. Now I would just concentrate, not for too long, you know, 10-20 minutes, maybe not even that long, maybe 5 minutes. It depends how much the painting needs and how messy I was in the first place. So you can add some rocks down here, for example. You know, add some shoreline stuff. You could add some rocks down here, like some bigger ones where it meets the shore, where they would be. And then you could add some lines. So it's kind of your imagination now, where you could have fun and do whatever. Maybe some rocks. I don't like this bush at all, so. But I mean, if I don't like something, I generally just leave it anyway, and like trying to work out why I didn't like it and fix it next time. I wouldn't worry too much about it now. So just add little details. So I would do this everywhere and tidy bits up. So like that's not very neat, so I'd tidy that up. This highlight's a bit messy, so tidy that up. Maybe add some snow down here. Now you can spend as much time or as little time as you want, depending on if I like a painting. Quite often I don't like what my painting looks like, and I'll be like, I'm not spending any more time on it, I'll just move on to the next one. But another trick towards the end is I got the Pro Pen and just shortcuts. But you can flip horizontally somewhere here, yeah, in the canvas section. So flip horizontally and paint like that for a while, and then flip it back, because you'll see problems that you didn't see before, because you stop seeing things after a while if you look at a painting for too long. And you can see things much more clearly. Like I don't, these 3 steps are a bit annoying, so I'd probably break those up. And so on. But there's nothing special after this point. It's basically one layer. So I'll flip it back. So one layer of lots of little tidy ups and detail, where they don't make a huge difference, but they're quite fun to do. And I mean, it's kind of up to you if you think they make a huge difference or not. So anyway, I think I'll wrap it up there. You could spend hours and hours more on this. You could add like a little castle up there. You could have a road. I do like doing roads actually, or paths even, because you can just do something like this. Put it into the distance, something stupid like that. And you can make it like kind of cool. But if you do roads and stuff, make sure parts of it disappear. Nice subtle little road. Okay, that's about it. This is the first time I've tried to do one of these, speaking and explaining slowly as I go along. I don't know if people like to watch this kind of stuff, so if you did like it, can you leave a comment and a like and subscribe if you haven't, so I know that this is useful for people. They take quite a long time to make, so I don't want to make them if people are not really interested, so let me know, and I can make more of them. Otherwise, I got loads of other videos where I speed it up a lot and explain much less detail, so maybe they're more useful for you if you don't want to watch such a long video. But if you got this far, I appreciate it a lot, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.